Want to talk some more about conflict resolution? In a previous video, I gave you a process to think through your position and another's position so that you could resolve conflicts and or build relationships in a way that works for both parties. But that requires some thinking, and sometimes you might be like right in the moment. What do you do then? Don't have time to go off and think about it and fill out a form. By the end of this video, I'll have left you with one practical strategy to think through and deal with conflict in the moment so that you de-escalate it as opposed to escalating it. For the best strategies to future-proof your career and continue to take it forward, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you can be notified whenever I post new content. I'm Christina dellisanti-Miller of Full Potential Realized, and I'm a career transition coach. I spent about 20 years in big corporates in strategic human resources roles, and I saw what was going on behind the scenes. So I'm using that information and insight to support my clients to really navigate the system with aplomb. And I've helped hundreds of women to take their career to the next level, even beyond what they thought was possible. Okay, so the basics of this strategy are about, are you escalating a conflict or are you de-escalating a conflict, and understanding the difference between the behaviors that make it worse or make it better. So starting with the premise that we're going for a win-win solution where both parties' needs are being met, that's the platform we're standing in. And we're looking to dissolve the conflict as opposed to continue it. So there's a scale, AEIOU, that helps you remember the sequence or the organization of actions or ways of being that either escalate or de-escalate conflict. So A stands for attack. That's the thing that takes the conflict further, faster, and stronger. And one thing we know about conflicts is that attack begets attack. So if you want to resolve the conflict, the worst thing to do is to attack, because if attack begets attack, you're going to be promoting further conflict. The next layer down, less intense or less furthering the conflict, but still advancing the conflict, is E, evade. I have to sometimes get real with myself about this, because sometimes I evade as a way to not attack, because it'll be really bad if I attack, so I try to take it down. But I have to be honest and say, okay, that's still a behavior that escalates conflict. It doesn't de-escalate it. It's not as bad as attack, but it's still not as good as the next three. The third one, I, is inform. So inform is kind of neutral. Now you're not furthering the conflict, you're starting to de-escalate it, you're informing the position. So attack might be, so let's say somebody crosses a boundary, and attack might be, you know, you're a jerk for doing that. Evade might be, you don't call them back, or you just ghost them and you don't speak to them for a while, you give them the cold shoulder. Inform might be, you might say something like, that was a boundary that just got crossed. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with that. De-escalating further, the next one, O, is open. So you might say something like, I'm curious as to what has you do whatever they did, right? So now you're opening, you're getting into their mindset, you're curious, you're trying to understand their perspective, and now you're really de-escalating the conflict. So you know how they say seek to understand versus being understood? That's a de-escalating approach. Fifth behavior you can choose is unite, you. So unite might be something like, I really want us to find a solution that works for both of us, right? So it's in the win-win mindset. So here you're really taking all the air out of the balloon in terms of the conflict, and you're getting on the same team, right, in the way that you're positioning it. So one of the things you have to remember about this is as it occurs to the recipient is what it gets coded as. So when I was in graduate school, we had an exercise in this course, conflict resolution and mediation, and they had us do negotiations and tape them. And then we had to come back weeks later and code each sentence that was uttered by each participant in the role play as A, E, I, O, or U. Attack, evade, inform, open, or unite. And what I learned was, and this is important in terms of the framing, is the person who gets to code it, or the person who gets to decide what it is the recipient. So for instance, I said something and the other person on my team said, well, that came across as an attack. And I was like, well, I didn't mean it as an attack. It wasn't an attack. And the professor came by and I was like, nope, it's an attack. If that's how they heard it, that's what it is. So you're thinking about, how is this being received by the other person, and how can I frame it in a way that they'll understand my meaning? So the way to use this is to think about, when a conflict situation arises, what behavior am I going to choose? And if I would automatically attack or even evade, can I take it down to inform, open, or if you're feeling extremely generous, unite? And how can I practice de-escalating as opposed to escalating? And if I'm really mad, at least don't do anything that's going to escalate it until you can get to a place where you're calm enough to de-escalate. While this tool is useful for dealing with conflict, it's also useful for building relationships. So you're thinking about what will advance working together, inform, open, and unite are all tools or ways to frame what you say to someone else in a way that's going to advance a possible partnership. So if you're interested in learning the conflict resolution method that I mentioned before, you can go to fullpotentialrealized.com/win-win, all one word. I'll put a link in the description. And you can just grab a one-page instruction sheet and a worksheet with an example of how to work through it. Again, hugely valuable and something you can use over and over again in so many situations with one other person, or even with other groups, or with a series of groups, as a strategic tool to figure out how to move forward in a way that works for all parties. Check out these other videos on taking your career to the next level, whether it's just increasing your compensation, taking on broader responsibility, more complexity, getting a promotion, choosing a new role and preparing for it, taking on leading a team. Always to keep moving it forward and make it juicy and exciting. If you liked this video, please help me get in front of the people who are looking for it, who can really use this kind of support, by liking it, giving it a comment, sharing it with your friends, and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already done so. Thanks. I look forward to seeing you next time.